Before we got rolling today, just a little bit with a heavy heart with a good friend who passed, and Greg Knapp. And I've known Greg for over 20 years, and the NFL lost a good coach and a hell of a guy. He was funny, loved to talk shit at practice, which you guys probably wouldn't know. He was so clean and buttoned up on stuff. But I learned a lot from him as an assistant coach watching him. This was a pro's pro. I can remember we were at the Niners together. It was my first NFL job, and seeing him, the way he took notes. There was Bill Walsh speaking. I was like, can I have a copy of that? And so from that point on, I've made it a habit, kind of through the years of taking notes of coaches and so topics and things that I've gone through. And you'd be surprised through the years, the old notes that you found, whether it was through Mooch or Nick Saban or, Pete Carroll through the years. And that came from Napper, about a guy who was on his details and talk about standards of a professional and smart. So I'm going to miss him like crazy. I love the guy. And so it was tough. So I appreciate the number of texts that everybody sent out. So thanks a bunch. And with that, I'm ready to let it rip and answer some questions for you guys.
Brought up note taking, and Mike told us like you teach them how to take notes, and Kazi as well. Used to run DMC. Which song was it?
Man, nothing stays inside anymore, huh? I get it. So what I did do an exercise on note taking with them, and the purpose was, learning is a superpower, but note taking is a big part of that, and you can't write every word that I say. And so I said, I'm going to say over 100 words a minute, and so you can write 10 to 12. So I played an old song, Sucker MCs by Run DMC, because I knew every word, so I could sing along as it was going. And so what we did is I said, all right, we're going to have a little competition here. I want you to write down every word that you hear, And so, okay, they started, they heard the beat, and then as it started, you saw them frantically go, and then we had a little competition to see who could remember, which lines. And so the winner had like 2 lines right. And my point was that I know the system inside out. I'm going to talk really fast. I grew up in New Jersey. I talk fast, and that's how it's going to be. So if you think you're going to sit here and write every word that I'm going to say and you're going to get it, you're mistaken, because it's going to be how much you can, the main emphasis for it, and reviewing your notes and how does it go, and learning something with the intent of teaching it back to somebody else. And that's a big deal, because you learn it once when we're teaching it, and then teach it to a teammate, to someone else, so you really get it. And so I think that's probably what Kays or Micah were probably referring to.
Grab a bar?
No, I can, yes, but will I? No. So you had to ask. I understand. You only know if, no, we're good. You asked. I gave you a lot of good information on what we did. So from there, that is not living to eternity with that. So thank you.
Did Jay-Z help you in teaching your defense to these guys here?
That's a good question. It was how much was DeMonte have an influence on teaching the defense? I think he can probably decipher, my language quickly, to share, hey, what he might mean is this, could look into this. But so much of, it's not the exact same system, that he was a part of in Atlanta. So there's quite a few things that are different, and I've been definitely impressed by the way he started. But he has been a good resource for me behind the scenes. Hey, here's what Q might mean in this. And so it may not be scheme related, but, in a situation, in a moment, a style of play, an attitude that we want to play with. So he can back me in a lot of ways, scheme being one of them, but just a style and identity of how we want to play, that would be another.
He said that you find different ways to kind of teach things, and one of them was that he wasn't talking a lot early in his career, and you mic'd him up. And
I did.
Where do you come up with these things?
Yeah, so I did mic him up, and so there was a good clip from John Lynch playing in the Super Bowl against the Raiders, and I thought that was a great example. He was telling Dexter Jackson, hey, this formation came up, this is about to happen, and he ended up getting an interception and scoring on the play, and you could hear him clearly, hey, Dexter, and he gave him the signal of what it was going to be. I think it was like sluggo seam, and so he said it to him, he made the play. And you could hear John coming off the sideline. Was it sluggo seam? Was it? And yeah. So what a powerful statement to say. Not only did he have his self organized, in terms of what could happen, but if you really, really want to be a great teammate, you have to get to where you can communicate at a level that you can help the person next to you. And at safety, you have to be able to, it's non-negotiable. And so what we did with Kays in that moment was we mic'd him up, and then I put his voice into every play. So while we were watching it, you could hear him. So I wouldn't say it was as good as NFL Films quality would be, but they got the point that it wasn't to the standard that it could be, because the standard that I showed with John, that was championship standard. And so I wanted him to know there's another place to take your communication. Just making rip, Liz, right, left calls wasn't going to be enough. That wasn't going to cut it. And lucky for him, the energy that he plays with, he was ready for the challenge to improve upon that.
Is that something you regularly?
Quiet guy.
He's not a quiet guy. Don't get talking confused with he loved to talk shit. He was full of energy, but the information that needed to happen at the moment by the play, that could increase. So you're right that it wasn't that he was not saying anything, but I wanted to make sure the alerts, the calls, what it could look like.
Is miking up a tactic you often use, and do you think you'll mic up any of your defenders this training camp?
Yeah, I haven't brought it up to anybody here, and the communication's off to a good start. But if I sense that would be, that would probably be a trick to pull out of the back pocket for sure.
How do you monitor Micah's time as outside backer, as defensive end? How do you gauge what he can handle right now?
Yeah, and I think what was nice about the spring of being able to to go through practices, you had a chance to see where some of his strengths lie, and so that was a good piece for me as it went through the spring and into the summer, that I could negotiate and look at some packages to say how would we feature him in some ways. And so I started that process yesterday, and not all of the ones that we'll try will be part of our permanent package, but I think that goes with looking into things to say how would this look and going, because some of these are going to be new. But to his credit, he's worked hard. There's very few busts on his end, and so I think anytime you have some adjustments, that's my job to make it easy to follow and easy to understand, so he doesn't have to think. I don't want anywhere I want us to play really fast and really clear about how we're going to go after it, because any hesitations and thoughts on defense just slows you down, and he's got exceptional quickness to go, so I want to feature him in those ways.
You had Micah and obviously Jalen and Leighton on the field together. How do you plan to use those guys, and what's the role? I know it's going to evolve, you look at all different type of things. But
Yeah, we're fortunate that we do have a number of good players, and what thing I do is I want to make sure we have enough roles for guys that they can do their thing really well. So, if you look at the linebacker spot, there's a number of guys that are going to have roles. They all won't be in the same packages together, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be significant roles, for their team and how we're going to win. And I think winning at that position is going to come in a number of different ways. Who's got roles? How do we feature them? And third down, there's 2 minutes. There's first and second down things. So when you put all those together, now the game plan comes to life. But each day, we're practicing guys at some different spots.
besides the Eagles, guys who long-time starters, they got a first-round rookie, playing the first-round pick, and accepting different roles, I guess, than they've had in the past.
Yeah, I think it still comes down to winning, and so the better the team does, the better we all do. And so having a real clear vision of your job, and you can nail that every single time, that's a really powerful statement. And so making sure the roles that you own, you'd bet on you every single time to get that job done. And so that's what we're working through now. I told the team when we got started on the 21st that there's 40 days, and there's a lot we can accomplish in 40 days. That was going to be to the end of our preseason against Jacksonville. And over those 40 days, I gave them some things that we wanted to measure during that time, and system expertise and roles and our defensive identity. And it wasn't going to be done in 1 day or 2 days. It's going to take time to keep building that. And so we're just 1 day into this. We got a lot of work to do and a long way to go. But the effort of what we want to do, I'm pretty jacked about where that's headed.
Been a big situational substitution guy, or do you see yourself doing more of that because of the versatile type of athlete you have here?
Probably a little bit of both. I think all coaches would like that, but now that you have people that you can, you really want to take advantage of that, and especially in the front seven, because now you can have, whether it's pass rush and big guys, we've got a lot of versatility now to do that, where some guys can really guard and cover, and other guys can rush. We've got some big guys that can hammer down in the run game. So if you have that, I definitely want to have the ability to play them in waves And if you're at your best at the very end of the games, when we all know in this league there's going to be a ton of 2 minutes, that's when you have to be at your best. And by having waves of players, you allow, guys who are fresher to play at the end. That's a hell of an advantage.
Is there a line to how much Micah, as a rookie, coming off a year where he didn't play any football, as a rookie, to how much he can handle on his plate? And if so, how do you gauge where that line is located?
Yeah, I think the real line would be, from the physical and the conditioning standpoint, because the mental part of it, he's done a nice job. So we got to make sure that we find that groove, like all ball players. What's the right amount, from practice times to reps in the game, and we'll, measure that and learn more as we go. But for one day in, it's, we're still learning that process. But we'll find it, because the guy works. He's got a good role for it, and if I felt it was getting too much, on the volume side from learning, that's my job to back it off. And so we'll measure, the amount of conditioning and the speed to go. And we don't have a number on that yet, but we will.
That individual instruction that you guys had after practice yesterday, is that something that you plan on being something of a common thread during camp?
Yeah, it would be, yep.
So what's kind of the philosophy to those sessions?
Well, I think when a player plays, sometimes more than one position, there's some good guidelines that you want to follow to make sure that nothing really gets lost, in the crack. In other words, if you were playing corner and you're always in with the corners, and you're pretty much going to get all the information for that spot. But for him, where he's has some pass rush background, and he's got certainly the big linebacker background, I can fill some of the space on the pass rush side, and so that's where a lot of our conversations will go. But it's also a good check-in to make sure where we're at, what we want to work on today, and be really deliberate on this day. These are the things we want to work on. On this day, these are the things that we're going to work on.
Sure. The guy that didn't take a conventional path to the NFL.
Can you repeat the first part?
And didn't take a conventional path to the where.
Understatement of the day.
Yeah. How did you get in? How did you guys get together, and why was he the right guy for you to take?
Yeah, well, fortunately, through a connection with this organization. And so he'd actually done an internship in Dallas. And so a friend of mine, Jerome Henderson, had recommended him. And so he did a Bill Walsh fellowship with us, ended up going through for the whole year. And I just thought he had a rare ability as a teacher. And so then for the next, 3 seasons, right there, right by my side in a number of ways, at linebacker, at defensive line. And he's made a remarkable, not transition into the NFL, because that wouldn't be the right term, but a remarkable ascent into it. But with world-class teaching skills, that's, you can know how valuable it is as a coach. He's an excellent motivator. So, he's got a huge future in this league.
What's your vision?
In Atlanta, you used your first-round pick on the corner. You took the kid from Clemson. You passed on Trevon Diggs. What are you seeing from Diggs here, and any possible reason why you guys didn't take him down there?
No reason why, just as you're, going through the normal evaluation process, but, knowing a long history, of that position, man, have I been impressed by Diggs. His competitiveness, his length, I knew he had excellent ball skills, but sometimes you still need to be around somebody to really appreciate it. You can see something on tape and say, oh, that's good, but when you see him in person and you see he catches and you don't really hear it. There's a very easy, not one-handed back, behind the shoulder, whatever it is. And so those were the things that jumped out to me, right away from him. But I think both guys are going to have an excellent future in the league. But I've certainly been impressed by Trey so far.
What's your vision for Keanu Neal and for Randy Gregory?
Can you repeat the second player?
Randy Gregory. And
Got it. Yeah, so let's talk what's the vision, and as we're heading into it with Keanu Neal and with Randy Gregory. So with Kiki, we made the transition, the biggest one, moving from safety to linebacker. In the system that he was in, he played down by the line of scrimmage a lot. So some of the techniques that he's played at safety were, in the same system. He could have been a linebacker doing that. So we knew he had the physicality to play down in the box, and so that was the biggest transition to play inside. And the biggest part of that would probably be in the sub packages, the nickel and dime packages. That's where he's so familiar and comfortable with anyway. So a lot of those same roles. And then for Randy, I am so excited to see what he can be, and it's as a featured pass rusher, in our system, and you just can't have enough, from guys on the outside who can cover and pass rushers like over and over and over. And I've been impressed by where he's at. mindset, attitude to do it. So it's been a good group on the outside, and I'm looking forward to having DeMarcus join into that group as well, because Bash has been here. I've got the first chance to work with Bradley, but Randy definitely has been a guy who's opened my eyes. Kind of like we were talking about with Diggs. Like I knew he was good, but then when you're around somebody in a full-time way, you said there's some special traits there, and that's my role. I want to keep it real with the guys and talk to them in a language to say, hey man, I want to take from where you're at and get it better. And I think that's what winning football is, when you take a guy from one space and move him to another, and that's going to be the goal with both of those players, to make sure, hey, wherever they're at, I want to hit at them hard and keep it honest and say, this is where we need to go, and I plan on doing that.
Kelvin Joseph, Coach, when you look at last year, and you evaluate players from last year, how do you balance saying, all right, this is what they were asked to do there, and looking at some special traits, but knowing that you're probably going to have a different role for them as well? I mean, is there some things that you're looking for that you can tell what you can use?
Yeah, and what's good about that too is when you have a longer history. Some of them I saw in college, and it's okay in the evaluation process. So they've been part of our system. How would we have used them? And then looking at the calls, you have a good understanding of how they're playing, what they're playing, and how they would feature them. It's kind of like the why free agency grading is easier than college grading, because you're seeing them play against similar people, and you have a good understanding of the scheme and how they're doing in that. And fortunately for me and for a lot of people, when you have good players, generally they play good in a lot of schemes. And so whether they came in out of college in a 4-3 system and they had a little bit more 3-4, that's just a matter of training them to get them in that spot. But the traits, that's always what you're looking for. The speed, the physicality, the ball skills, those traits, you almost have to look at it as a scout first and say, okay, with those kind of traits, how would they fit into the system?
You've watched Randy going back to Nebraska. Can you just speak to how natural he is as a pass rusher? It's what we've been able to see when he's been on.
Yeah, I would say he's got a rare ability to bend. And, that's unusual. But for a guy who's 6'4.5", and you can get on the corner, think of, he has to go against, big tackles here. But this guy can rip on the edge where you have to make the big guys get down and bend to get to him. And so that's a pretty rare trait. There's a lot of guys who can run fast straight ahead, and that's good. Like as a pass rusher, if you don't have a good get off, it's hard to be a good rusher. He has that. He's got initial quickness. But I think it's his ability to stick his foot in the ground and bend that makes him so unique. When it's time to twist, and he can bend and get outside or inside on a player. So he's got unique stuff, and like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing, okay, here's where we're at and here's where we're trying to get to.
Coach, Kelvin Joseph was playing left corner, Deshaun Wright right corner. Is that where they'll stay, or are they competing in general at corner and we might see them?
Yeah, you'll see him move around, and I think there may be some times when you want to match up on some people, so it's important not just to always, stay at one spot, where Trey might be on this side, he'll go over to the other guy to match on a player. And so AB, you'll see him both at corner and at nickel. You'll see Sean both sides, and Kel as well. So those guys they're intermixing now, and that's part of that 40 days, that I was referring to of roles and, how we're going to play. And so until we get closer to those, I'm going to continue to put them into different spaces.
Micah told us that your shoe game blows his out of the water. How long have you been wearing the Jordans? Have you talked to Dak at all about being a Jordan brand athlete?
I have not, but I'm definitely open to all conversations about that. I don't know. A long time, I guess. Well, I grew up, during the 80s where, like, when Jordans came out, it was a big deal. And so I love basketball, still love, watching it. So that's probably where it started back at, 15 years old. And same thing with Run DMC. So same time, same moment.
About Joseph, he had missed some time in his quarantine, doesn't have a lot of college games. Where is he at right now? Is he a little bit behind?
Yeah, I don't think he's behind, and I think as a coach, what are you looking at? I mean, we only had one practice too, so there's not 10 days for us to have. Day one it was good, but what I would say is he came in excellent shape. And so as a coach, you're always kind of keeping your eye out. What does that first day look like? Are they able to finish in that space? And so he was one of the players that I thought really, demonstrated that speed that he has. Because it's one thing if you have it, but if you're guarded or you're worried about your conditioning, you're not ready to open it up and rip it. And he was. And so that told me this guy's, put some good work in on the conditioning side, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he can go to. But I love, getting to know him better and building these relationships. And the trust takes time, to build that. It doesn't happen overnight. And so he's, one of the guys that I've enjoyed getting to know better. And all these rookies, we got a 11 of them on the defensive side and getting to know all of them and finding what their roles can be. And they're trying to figure that out too. You know, they all want their shot and going for it, but they're going to get their moments, you know, against the first team. And that's going to happen some in practice where, you know, next guy's going to go in and how are you going to respond and how are you going to play? And so it's not always, you know, backups against backups. I'd like to see put into the fire right away. You want to be down for it? Let's see what it looks like.
You guys got a lot of players, but you talk to, you know, Steven and Jerry, and they look at you as being the difference in remaking this defense that was one worse than for that. Any pressure on you?
You know, I think I probably told you this. I guess what I learned most about my life, I love doing hard shit with a group of people. I love being at the game, end of the line, right on it. Like, those are my favorite moments. And so to be here is why, you know, I was pumped when Mike, you know, offered me the opportunity to come and join here. I wanted to be a part of this. And so having that chance and getting a chance to work with the guys here, it's absolutely, you know, where I wanted to be and how I wanted to go after it. And so feel super fortunate to be able to do that, especially in light of, you know, talking about Napper and moments and opportunities and going for it. And so that really hit me this week about, you know, how fortunate I certainly am to be here and part of this organization.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
All right, you guys have a good one.